What's up, everybody? It's Brad. I'm going to be doing a little eensy-teensy-weensy mini art world report today on the documentary film Beautiful Losers, which is a film about good skateboarders LARPing as bad hobbyist artists. This, of course, is all research for my upcoming art world report about the artist KAWS. And the very first place I ever encountered KAWS was as a naive American Apparel V-necked high school student who purchased this book. And while I have read the book, I have not watched the documentary. So I don't know how much KAWS is actually going to be in this, but at very least, I think it'll kind of contextually fill out the realm from which KAWS emerged. Enough talk. Let's do this thing.
When I was young, I thought art was something for rich people. A bunch of bored kids, like a bunch of dumb bored kids. These people were speaking a language that was my language. It was like a language that you didn't have to be smart to understand, you know what I mean? All you had to do was have a heart, and that was enough. And I was always super inspired by that.
I think this intro sets up what we're going to be seeing a lot throughout this film, which is kind of a vague lip service paid to bland ideas of individualism, just like paying homage to uniqueness and to creativity and to going your own way and to just being a cool-ass dude. All of this lip service paid to individualism is really meant to cover up a kind of pervasive self-indulgence, which is endemic to this entire generation of artists. A lot of these people became famous for a kind of twee, figurative style of drawing portraits that they started when they were teenagers and repeated the rest of their lives. When Aaron Rose describes this hermetically sealed social world of people speaking their own language about art, what he's really doing is kind of glossing over the fact that this social world didn't bother to look to the past to study art history that came before it, or acknowledge their own peers who were making work alongside them their entire existence. When Aaron Rose says, maybe our work didn't look like the rest of the art worlds, but that's because we were too busy being ourselves. The work didn't look like the rest of the art worlds because you didn't bother to take the time to learn about the rest of the art world. If your only sustained interest in being a practitioner of art is to figure out new ways to draw a guy that has a funny looking nose, and your only sphere of influence consists of whoever you skated the Brooklyn Banks with last weekend, you're gonna wind up making a lot of lazy, self-indulgent shit. Funny looking character, funny looking character, funny looking character.
My first memory of creating anything is rabbit houses on a piece of paper. It was a green line with carrots that, most of it was brown, and then a green line on the top and a little bit of blue, and then a tunnel, and then the different rooms of the rabbit's house.
I used to draw my toys all the time. These tanks I would draw incessantly, and war scenes, like War II, really so embarrassed.
A pretty clear one is coming home from seeing Battlestar Galactica in the theater and drawing epic battle scenes. So it's like the ships were small, but then there's like a lot of laser play.
When I was a kid, I wanted to be
Most of my early years, I wanted to be a garbage collector.
They're all still doing the same shit as adults.
I'm an adult. You grow up and lose that. You stop creating. You stop just involving yourself in the joy of coloring and creation and stuff. And I just feel like I was lucky enough to never really lose that.
Pretty important to emphasize the idea of childhood innocence and purity when your art hasn't changed since then. I think part of what made this generation of beautiful losers so inviting and so popular to so many people was that everybody, when they were growing up, had a little character they would doodle in their notebook. A little guy with a funny mustache or a character with pointy triangle titties or something. But for most of us who went on to dedicate our lives to being artists on into adulthood, we stopped making those doodles. Not because we lost our conception of self, but because we recognized that a guy with a funny mustache is a limited artistic tool to describe a large, complicated world.
That even if I spend spend a lot of time going over the line and over the line and trying to make it straight, I will never be able to make it straight. And from a distance, it might look straight, but when you get close up, you can always see the line waver. And I think that's where the beauty is.
Attracted to those places that don't seem important, or those things that seem off the grid. It's a horrible phrase. Like off the value grid. Like what's not valuable anymore actually seems like really rich to me.
These are amazing. You took all these?
I've always found beauty in uncommon places. Homeless people, graffiti. Photography lets me capture all that. Have you ever been photographed before?
Oh, just by like friends.
Well, here's what I've been doing around here. It's for a series on exposure in the workplace.
Crazy little face guys, crazy noses, crazy characters everywhere. Just keep fucking painting them no matter what.
So much graffiti is kind of like 13-year-old boy, almost more like comic nerd, you know? I don't even know if any of these guys actually look at comics, but it's like that kind of vibe. It's not like high art. It's more like of a popular art.
Yeah, it's almost like that.
I got subcultural when I was like in 7th grade or something.
Subcultural?
I know that some people think it's dumb to even paint, but you know what? That's cool. Because some people think it's dumb to like do everything.
It's a subversion, you know. And the only subversive message I'm putting across is like, you can be you. You have the right to be exactly who you are.
I think when you keep hearing this Mr. Rogers messaging that, you know, it's okay just to be you, the assumption is that this is a way of protecting difference. But as the documentary progresses, what you realize is that they're really saying it's okay to be normal. It's okay to be a normie. It's okay to be the twee middle-class teenager you were raised as.
Pay the bill. Make organic eggs. Continue kissing my beautiful wife that I love.
And we would practice in the house, and my parents were really supportive. Like, they would come to our shows with aggression. My dad would be wearing the suit, and my mom would be. And they'd come to almost every show, like at a little dumb house party or whatever. And it just made me hate them even more, that they were so supportive and actually kind of cool about it.
Moral life. You know, I'm living basically a Christian life right now. I'm not killing animals. I'm a vegan. I'm taking great precautions to be compassionate to all creatures on the earth. You know, faithfully married for 14 years. I run a business and I go out of my length to not fuck people over and to do things that I think are like sound. I feel like I'm living a good moral life, a very strong moral life. Why would I not make it into heaven?
If there is any question as to how all of this stuff so easily found its way onto the shelves of Urban Outfitters, it's likely because there's really no difference between the people making this art and the target demographic of shopper Urban Outfitters is trying to reach. There's really only one person who seems a little different than the rest of them, and it's reflected in the work that he makes.
Samuel, who got his head cut off here. He was a pool shark and a delinquent. And I guess he had ripped somebody off or something, and someone severed his head with a switchblade, I think, and they found it in the center of the dragon. Hey, how you doing? You know, we found my friend Samuel's head there back in '86.
Harmony Korine definitely stands out in this movie, not only because he's the only person who seems to have a sense of humor in a cast of people who are otherwise unbearably twee or insufferably self-serious, but also because the life experiences he draws from and the corresponding body of work he made from those experiences is probably the only genuinely interesting body of work out of all of these people. And I know Harmony's prone to his own self-indulgences, but Julian Donkey Boy is one of the funniest fucking movies.
I have no illusions. The world is, you know, it's all nothing, you know what I mean? It's like all such nothing. Like, money's funny money. Like, popularity, it's fucking, it just goes, you know. You look at,
you know, there's ways to be the Beatles, to have the smartest guy in the room and the dumbest guy in the room digging what you're doing.
I'm wary of like this idea that you have to get bigger, more exposure, a bigger audience. It's all bullshit to me too. What's so great about that?
You know, I got a really like positive response from people. Like people felt like good about it, and people who were fans were like, "That's so rad, you did that. Like that's so good, man. You got over it." And maybe that's because I've been really, I would hope that it's because I've tried to remain pretty like responsible in what I do.
Well, that doc was terrible, thanks in large part to how terrible the work it featured was. It was comic book art that didn't have any comedy. It was outcast art made by completely normal people. It was an ode to the past that learned nothing from it. One reason this art has aged so poorly is because it was isolated and preserved in amber from the very start. These artists were admittedly unaware of the rest of the art that was taking place in the 90s and 2000s because they were too busy trying to preserve their own youth by repeating the same funny mustache character they came up with when they were 17, without ever bothering to ask, why? Why have I drawn this fucking character 30,000 times in a row? The film goes through great lengths to present this unexamined outlook as a kind of noble dedication to craft. But all I really see is fear. Fear of change, fear of self-awareness, fear that if you stop making work that looks like a teenager, somebody might hold your art up to the standards of an adult.